Next on The Professional Rule Breaker.
Hi, I am Laura Khalil from Elevate, and I love listening to The Professional Rule Breaker because of the great insights on how you can take your business to the next level. So you should too.
So welcome back to The Professional Rule Breaker Show. I'm your host, Kathy Walterhouse, and today we have a special person. She's a speaker and a coach, and she helps take the guesswork out of landing big clients. And she's consulted with some of the biggest companies in the world, including one that I actually worked for. And she pulls back the curtain and helps consultants sign the biggest deal in their career and go after that big deal energy. So I want to welcome my next guest, Laura Khalil.
Thank you so much for having me. Wait a minute. What company do we have in common?
Oh, GE.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The big monster GE. Yes. Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah, absolutely. Major international company. I did really, really well there. I sold a ton when I was with GE, but yeah, that was quite some time ago.
Yep.
Definitely quite some time ago.
They're still around.
Yeah, they're still around and they're still kicking. Oh yeah. I actually did some sales calls with Jeffrey Emmelt, the CEO of GE years ago. He's no longer the CEO anymore, but yeah, so that was an interesting experience or experiences doing that with him.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it was kind of cool. Different. A lot of lessons from it, I would say. I learned a lot. And I always think that, I mean, he's a great guy, but I feel that, and I remember my boss said this to me, he goes, you could be CEO. And I'm like, you're probably right. And so I'm like, I learned not to underestimate myself at that point, but that's a whole nother podcast.
I know, but can I just tack on to that for 1 second, because I think it relates to what we're talking about today.
Okay.
And helping individuals realize, especially the owners of your own small business, you actually are the CEO of your business.
Absolutely.
And you can treat yourself like that. It's okay to be the CEO of your business because they are just human beings.
Yep. They're
just like us.
Yep. Just like us. They get up every morning, take a shower, do everything just like us, but we have a tendency to put people on a pedestal. And I get the same thing too. People put me on a pedestal and I'm like, no, if I can do it, I always tell people, if I can do it, I know you can do it too.
Yep.
So
I agree. And I just have to say, I feel like when we can sort of, to your point, take them a little bit off that pedestal and see that we're actually equals, even though they're running a really big company and maybe I'm running a really teeny weeny company in comparison, we're still human beings. And when we can stop, especially as business owners, looking at the bigger client, that sort of big name brand, and we can just say, actually, they're just like me. They have the problems that I've already helped clients solve. I have every right to be in that room with them as a trusted advisor. Part of what we talked about it, or you mentioned it at the beginning, I help people sign the biggest deals of their career. And some of that is, of course, the tactical, figuring out what we're offering, figuring out how to get through the process, the sales process, finding the right people to talk to and all that. But there's a mindset shift that's very important. And it is this. It is not seeing the client as someone who's better than you, who is up on high, who is untouchable. It's really seeing them as your peer and treating them as a friend, treating them as you would someone you really cared about. Honestly, it can make such a difference in how you approach those larger deals.
oh my gosh. I mean, that is so true because first off, they're going to appreciate it if you just treat them like someone normal. And the way that I always look at it is they have some big problem and I'm here to basically be their savior. And bigger deals are always, they take longer, they can take longer, but bigger deals in my mind, and maybe it was just the mentality that I always had, the bigger deals were always easier, much easier than a smaller deal.
Yes.
So it definitely is a mindset shift. And I guess always feeling that you belong in the room. I always felt I belong. I still, to this day, still feel that wherever I go, I belong in the room. And it doesn't mean that I don't have the nerves or anything like that. I mean, everybody does. Even
Yes.
those people, the CEOs of the world, or whomever, the movie stars or whatever, everyone gets the jitters in some shape or form. But just knowing that you deserve to be in the room, I think takes away so much more of it. If nothing else, I always teach people a bunch of tricks, but just take a deep breath before you go
Yeah.
in or before you speak or whatever. Just center yourself as well too.
I so resonate with that. Years ago, I was walking into the boardroom to talk to the CTO, one of the largest tech companies on the planet. And I was scared. I'm not going to lie. I was scared. And I was there with my client. We were going to go share a presentation of some of our work with the CTO. And he looked at me and I think he could tell I was nervous. And he said, Laura, you deserve to be in that room.
Mm,
I just was like, you're supposed to be here, Laura. You're supposed to be here. To your
mm.
point, I took a breath. I said, you're going to own the room. You're going to stay calm. And it went great. But yes, it is nerve wracking, even for people who are listening or watching this, even for Kathy and I, who like are the supposed experts, right? It's still nerve wracking to do this stuff,
Oh,
but we
yeah.
do it.
Absolutely. I have a phrase. Actually, I always said that I had this phrase before Nike did. Just do it. Just
Yeah.
like knock it off and just go do it. Take that deep breath and just go do it. Because what's the worst thing that can happen? They'll say no, or they won't talk to you, or whatever. Who cares? They're not the only ones on the planet. There's a lot more people that you can go and you can go see, or you can talk to over the phone, or you can Zoom, or even just the whole thing electronically. Because if you're really solid in what it is, you know what your gifts are, and you're really solid on your product or your service, there's a market for it. You just have to find them and make sure that they know
Yeah.
about you as well. So I want to ask you, what is the big deal energy? I know what it is, but I want you to tell the audience. I just want to mention my sponsor today, because if you're just tired of toxic ingredients in the things that you use every single day, go to switchaway.com/rule breaker. And one of my friends will help you out. They have the products like toothpaste, healthy snacks, all sorts of things for you to use that don't have the toxic ingredients. And I'm all about healthier and safer products. So check it out.
I love that. Big deal energy obviously is a way of feeling. It's a way of approaching this, as we have sort of been talking around, but it's also the really specific action steps that you need to take. Talking about the feeling is, you just said it, Kathy, we all deserve to be in the room. Okay. The second thing is thinking bigger about our business and what we offer. And the way I would put it is like this. Whenever we start out in business, typically, if you imagine we're in Manhattan, and let's just imagine we're at the ground floor of some big, huge building. And when we're on the ground floor of a building, I can see outside the front doors. I can probably see the cabs and people walking down the street, and I can see maybe 40 feet ahead to the building in front of me. Big deal energy is about finding the support and resources to find and go to the secret elevator around the corner. This is what we do as advisors to our clients. We take them around to the corner. We say, I want to show you something. Come with me. Taking the elevator up to the 100th floor and getting out and looking over what you previously could only see was 50 feet in front of your face. Now we can see the horizon. We can see the expanse of Central Park. We can see how great the vision can be for our businesses. And so what I want to encourage everyone to do is that you can embody big deal energy by just thinking so much bigger about your business. And I bet you have dreams of what you could accomplish. I bet you have also said, yeah, but I could never do that. Or yeah, but that wouldn't work. And we stop ourselves right as we're having the dream. And I want to encourage you that if you have a dream, if there's something you want to achieve with your business, you don't have to achieve it all tomorrow. This is truly a journey. But what is one step you could take in that direction every day? If you can take one step every day, you will be in an entirely different place in a year. And that is really part of embodying the ethos that I believe in and that I teach my clients is we just take one step every day and we just keep going and we just keep doing it, even when we don't want to, but thinking bigger about what we offer and how we serve.
Absolutely. And it's all about breaking it down into pieces because if you have that vision, whatever it is, and you just look at that and you're in point A, and let's say the vision's point Z, right?
Yeah.
The end of the alphabet. You would look at that and you go, oh my gosh, that's impossible. It's never going to happen. I'm never going to get there. But if you start breaking it down, exactly what you said, and taking one step at a time, before you know it, you'll go from A to Z and you'll be able to get there and kind of enjoy the journey, right? I mean, you got me thinking about like some of the biggest deals I've ever done. I found them to be so much fun, like so much fun. And I think if people really go after whatever their big vision is, and the first time they accomplish it, it's almost like an addictive feeling. It's, oh, I got to do that again type of
Yeah.
thing and go after it because the amount of fun and just the, I wouldn't say joy, but it's just, I would say a full body good feeling giggle or something like that. I mean, I don't know how else to say that. And I have a power move that I do too. And I would always do the power move at that point, like when it would
Mm-hmm.
accomplish. So just really anchoring in that feeling. And that's maybe why I can go back to it and I go, ooh, I remember that.
Yeah. We always think that the goal is what's going to make us happy. We always think once I get here, I'll be happy. And there's a couple challenges with that. The first is that the goalpost keeps moving.
Moving.
So even when we do hit those goals, then we think, but now I want more. And there's this other thing I want down the road. And so the happiness can be very fleeting. So I really want to highlight what you've said, because this is really important. It is about learning to love the process, and you will appreciate the wins and the losses along the way as part of the process. We have also, the way you were describing it reminded me of what I tell my clients, which is this is a game.
Mm-hmm.
We've decided we're going to play the game of entrepreneurship. And some of the rules in that game are going to be handed to us, such as you're going to have to find clients and you're going to have to sign contracts and you're going to have to fulfill work. Okay. So we know those are part of the game. But how you accomplish those are the rules you get to set for yourself. How you approach your days, or that's what you get to define. And that's what can make it really fun and challenging. And I don't know one game. I happen to love board games, Kathy. I am like a board game nut job. The best games I've played, this could go for anyone who plays board games, video games, soccer, whatever you do. The best games are fun, but they're also challenging. You need both. If you played a game, if you were on a sports team and you played a game and it was like you just mopped the floor with the competitors, it was so easy, you never had any trouble, you'd get bored.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need a challenge. And
Need a
this is a juicy
challenge.
challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, that is part of it, especially if you have that, I would say that conquering mindset. It's almost the way that I always looked at it is you're just climbing a mountain and it's just getting all the way up to the top. And again, if you looked at the top mountain, you would be like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get there. But if you just pay attention to where you are at this present moment and put one foot in front of the other, you're going to get there. And let's say you slip, you fall. It's like a failure almost, right? Then you learn, okay, that rock over there is slippery. Every rock that looks like that is slippery. Let me go over here. So you learn something to get you to go to the next level as well too. So yeah.
You learned how to get better. One thing I love to talk about, Kathy, this is a kind of strange question, but do you like pancakes? Have you ever made pancakes?
I love pancakes.
Okay, me too. So You may be familiar with this, and I think our listeners will be familiar with this. It's Saturday morning. We're putting the batter, we're mixing the batter, we're getting everything ready, we're heating up the pan. And if you're anything like me, the first pancake is a mess. It's
It's
either it's
deformed.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Something. I'm like, is a pan not warm? What's right? Or too warm or whatever. Yeah.
exactly. It kind of looks like a mess, and it tastes good, but it's a
Hmm.
little wonky. I want to encourage everyone that as you're listening to us discuss like making mistakes or having failures, these are like making the first pancake.
Hmm.
The first pancake, I would encourage everyone to just make more pancakes. The first pancake, expect it to be wonky, expect it to be weird, expect it to not look exactly like what you had in your head. And that's okay,
Yep.
because you will get better as you put in the reps. We go to the gym, we put in the reps, right? The first time you go to the gym, you're doing the 5 pounders, and you might be thinking, oh, this is really tough. But then you get to graduate to the 10 pounds, the 15, the 20, whatever it is. And, then you're like Mr. Olympia or whatever. I mean, you know what I'm saying? My point is, you got to start somewhere. So make the first messy pancake and just get it out of the way, because that's really where it starts. I see a lot of people in business who are delaying their own success.
Hmm. Because it has to be
Like,
perfect.
has to be perfect.
Right.
And they're not just doing it, just do it, make it messy, make it imperfect, and then you'll learn enough to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that a lot. Even I get questions about like, how do you post and so often or whatever it might be, or how do you create this content? And I'm like, I got to the point where I was like, I'm just doing it. And if it's ugly, if it has a mistake in it, if whatever, there's editors that can fix anything. But I also think the messy part is something that really resonates with people. And if you wait until your content is perfect, or the way that you're speaking is perfect, or your product or service it needs to be absolutely perfect, or you're going to wait for that before you make those calls, you're going to be waiting
Mm-hmm.
forever.
You
And
will be
I've always
waiting.
said procrastination is really almost a form of fear more than anything else.
Absolutely. I can definitely see how it could feed into fear. It can actually feed into self-sabotage,
Mm-hmm.
imposter syndrome. I would encourage everyone to think about, when I fail, because you will, because that's being a human, how is that failure actually helping me get better, learn
Mm-hmm.
more, get more information? I'll tell you a funny story. Many years ago, I was invited to speak at my local WeWork.
Okay.
They were going to promote it, and they just said, just show up and you're going to do your talk and it'll be great. Okay, great. So I show up, I'm ready to give my talk. I'm fully prepared, right? Like, I've done all my work, I've done all my prep, all this stuff. I get my slides up. Kathy, nobody came.
Oh.
Nobody came. And the only person, and I said, I'm here to do this. I've been paid to do this. I'm showing up to do this. And I ended up giving my presentation to the guy waxing the floors. He'd just be walking by, and I'm sitting there talking basically to him and the receptionist or
Because you
something.
got great practice.
Exactly. And I said, if I can master being in a scenario where I have an empty room, essentially, if I can learn how to do this,
Mm-hmm.
I can learn how to improvise in any situation that I'm faced with. And so I did it. And gosh, I don't know, maybe that was 7 years ago. You could throw me anywhere and I will figure out a way to make it work. I've been on stages where the speaker hasn't shown up, and so they need me to ad lib with the audience for
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes. I got it now. I got it because I've learned that in those failures, there are beautiful lessons if we look for them to help make us better, make us stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? You just got me thinking about something because I've been told I can think on my feet better than most people or whatever. So I think there's a skill attached to it. And with what you just said, being able to go up there on a stage and in essence, you were thinking on your feet. So how did you get there?
Oh, Lord. Kathy, I feel like we're in therapy now. I got to lie down on the couch. You're going to start asking about my mother. We're going to get into it. Okay. So how did I get there? Let me take you back in time. I cut my teeth in the full-time world in Silicon Valley. And I was wearing, if you've ever seen the show Silicon Valley, it's pretty accurate. I was wearing a million hats. I was working in marketing. I was wearing a million hats. And the companies are moving very, very, very fast. So you kind of get trained to just act, just go. We can't wait. And so things can be very messy within that environment. But there was something really interesting that happened through that situation, because it'll sort of feed into, I know, our conversation today. At one of the first companies I worked at, my boss pulled me aside. I was at that point in my 20s. The boss pulled me aside and he said, I want to give you some feedback. And I felt like, I want to shoot for the stars. I'm excited. Give me feedback. And he says, you are intimidating men in the boardroom. So we're going to need you to smile more and soften your language. And eventually they put me on a PIP, otherwise known as a performance improvement plan. And my quality of my work was never in question. It was just my personality that was in question. And I couldn't be nicer and I couldn't smile more. So I was let go from that job.
I think you probably intimidated your boss, probably more than anything else. I hate to
I
say
probably
that.
it felt so crazy to me as a 27-year-old to think of someone who's like in their 40s, who's like sold companies. And I'm thinking, I'm learning here. I'm just excited to learn. Like, realized eventually, as I went through the full-time world for several more years and I encountered this kind of friction, I realized eventually that I can't have a personality lobotomy, Kathy. Unfortunately, my personality is my personality. And I realized that in those environments, I just was not being appreciated for who I was. I was appreciated for what I could do, how I could think on my feet, how I could move quick, but not for the ideas I brought to the table, the drive that I had, the persistence, the questioning. And I was basically collecting an unofficial PhD and getting laid off. I was great at getting laid off. So in 2013, when I started my business consulting, it came from that place of, oh my gosh, I'm just really not appreciated in a certain environment. But what I realized is that since I can't change other people, all I can change is the environment I put myself in and how the container I choose to play in. And so for me, we alluded to this in the beginning. I decided I was not going to work with startups. And the reason I was not going to work with startups and I was only going to work with big companies is because I knew from my experience the big companies had money. They understood what I did for a living. And if they understood what I did for a living, they valued it, which meant they would pay me appropriately for the role. And that because a larger company has other people in similar functions to me, I would have support resources. So I thought, I'm only going to work with the Fortune 500. Now, I was crazy enough to think I could do that with absolutely no contacts in the Fortune 500, because I thought, I'm just going to go do that because I don't want to work with startups. They don't appreciate me. But believe it or not, after making business development my job for about 6 weeks, I landed my first $100,000 contract with a Fortune 500 company through pounding the pavement. Like, as you and I know, you just go, you pound, you grind, you do it. And I realized something very interesting. All of the traits I was penalized for in one environment, being too much, too aggressive, in the other environment with larger companies, I was seen as dynamic. I was seen as a team leader. I was seen as bringing people together. I was seen as cutting through the mess, cutting through the noise, helping be very clear, helping the team. So I say that to people, one, because if you don't feel appreciated by your clients, you're probably not working with the right people. Mm-hmm. And I would even go so far as to suggest you might be thinking too small. Mm-hmm. And perhaps if you worked with clients who were larger, who actually know what you do, who have demonstrated experience with what you do, they would appreciate you more for what you do, what you bring to the table, compensate you fairly for it, and love you for who you are. Because that's what I want for every single one of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree that if you're not feeling appreciated, whether you are working for someone, like in your case, I would say, because I was also in the corporate world, so I understand that if you have I would say not necessarily a strong personality, but if you're always looking for a better way of doing something in the corporate world where everybody needs to wear a blue suit all the time, if that's that type of company, you're seen as making waves. What's
Yes.
really interesting, however, those companies love to bring people in that make waves
To make
as
waves.
as a consultant, which is
Yeah.
just kind of like an oxymoron, because I think if they opened it up and they listened more to their employees or rewarded like
Mm.
individual type thinking, out of the box type thinking, they probably would never have to hire a consultant ever, because they got the people right there in there.
That is an
It works for
excellent
them.
point.
Yeah.
Excellent point. I could not agree more with that. It's funny how I think sometimes consultants are looked at or derided sometimes by full-time staff, because full-time staff may say, we had that idea.
Mhm.
We already knew that. Why didn't you just listen to us? And often there is an incredible wealth of knowledge within those organizations, but they're not utilizing it.
And I would also have to make this statement that if you look, and I would say I'm just going to focus more on the sales side, but if you look, who are the people that are like the number one, number two, routinely, okay, maybe they might have a bad year every once in a while, but routinely with number one, number two, those are going to be the ones that are making the waves, because those are the ones that can go out there and get the clients, because the clients there's so many people trying to sell to them the same thing over and over again. But if you go in there and you think outside the box and you really learn about the client and kind of give them ideas of, I don't know how many times people go, oh my gosh, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
And then they're like, holy crap, we have to go and do this because this will
Yeah.
work, type of thing.
Big deals, big deal energy, going after larger contracts is a relationship business. You
Absolutely.
just hit the nail on the head. It is a
Mhm.
relationship business. You can cultivate these relationships, as I have done and you've done, but it is not the same type of sale that you're going to have with someone who's just looking for a hired gun
Mhm.
or sometimes we call it a lone wolf, to come in and do this task. When we put ourselves in the position of being, and the way I see a consultant is a trusted advisor to the people that we're going to be working with, trust has to be built. Trust has to be built, and people will buy according to the amount of trust we've earned with them, but trust is earned at different rates with different people. So it really depends on how much trust you've already built in terms of how quickly deals close, how much trust you've already built with them, where the need is emergent, and if they need it solved now. I always say, if you're the right person selling the right product and they're bought into you, they want to work with you, they believe you can help them, they like you and trust you, we can control for some of those. The third thing, though, is the right time. And this is the one that's harder for us to control for many reasons. They may not have budget. They may not have headcount available this year. They may be waiting till the next fiscal year. The project may not have kicked off. It could be a million reasons. And where I see solo service providers or small businesses falling down is not remembering to keep in touch. You've done all the work
Mhm.
of building the relationship and helping them know you're the right person with the right solution to their problem. But if you don't keep in touch consistently when it is the right time, they're going to go look for whoever's in front of their face, and it may not be you.
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's all about being a partner, a piece in the puzzle. And then if you try to push too hard when they're not ready, or you haven't even really found the true issue, you just are sitting there more on the surface, it's going to blow up on you. Granted, could you get some sales that way? Yeah, you probably could. Will you get a long-term relationship with somebody that's going to spend a ton of money with you? Probably not.
No, it's going to be very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I know we're not here to talk about sales objections, but it's interesting you talked about pushing for the sale. And I am not a fan of pushing a sale on anyone. I don't actually really like working with any client who felt that they had been pushed
Mhm.
into something. Would you want to be pushed into $100,000 deal? Like I certainly wouldn't. And so part of that is just recognizing that you don't have to push and you can actually create a lot of space and create more spaciousness between you and the prospect, and that will actually feel good to them. And when we make people feel good, remember, people aren't always going to remember what you do, but they're going to remember how they feel around you. And when you make people feel good, that's taking sort of a much more expansive vision of your business than I got to sign this right now. It's realizing I can go back to them in the future. We can continue to cultivate this relationship. They may have referral sources for me that they can, even though our deal didn't work out, they can refer me to someone. On that point, I did a very short consulting gig with one guy at GE. That turned into $300,000 worth of referral business for me from one little teeny weeny thing. It turned into more referrals because we cultivated the relationship and I became the point person for all these other projects and all these other people he knew. Taking the longer vision. Maybe it's a little project. Maybe it doesn't amount to anything, but what could it lead to with a little bit of nurturing? Just kind of like you're tending your garden. What could it lead to if you tended to your prospects and the people who are in your network?
Yeah. I agree with you. Absolutely. Yeah. Because it's always about nurturing. And you're not just going to necessarily just nurture one client, you're going to nurture many potential prospects and continue to grow with those. And at the same time, always keep on adding. Don't be stagnant because I recently spoke with a company and they literally were just working with the same customers over and over again. And then they're like, oh, we have to do something to increase our sales. And I was like, okay, this is an easy fix. This is a very easy fix.
Yeah.
Hey, referrals, other
Yeah.
people in the market. It was a pretty easy fix. But yeah, it's always about cultivating and growing your business, filling your funnel. For those that are listening that may not know what a funnel is, just think of a very wide mouth and you are just constantly putting prospects in there over and over and over and over again. And then as it gets narrow, there's going to be customers that come out. There's going to be larger customers. There's going to be mid-sized customers. There's going to be small customers. I personally am one of these ones. I like a mix. That's just who I am. And
Yeah.
I've always done that. So I always had the big deals going, had mid-sized deals going, smaller deals going, because timing is sometimes out of your
Yeah.
control, just like with what you said. So you always have things that are closing all the time.
It's absolutely true. Timing really depends. And knowing your sales cycle, knowing how long does it take for me to close a deal is absolutely critical. I would advise everybody to, when you have an idea of who you're working with and the types of companies you're working with, and even if you're like Kathy and you're working with big ones and middle ones and small ones, whatever it may be, tracking how long does it take to close those deals over the course of 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
Because you really need to get a 12-month view. That's going to also help us give us a sense for seasonality in your business. I can't tell you how many business owners, depending on their business, I have business owners who come mid-July are freaking out because they're like, everyone's on vacation. I can't get sales calls. What's going on? And I'm like, okay, so did this happen last year? Yeah. Okay. And when did it start to pick up? September. Okay. So what can we do with these maybe 4 weeks
Mm-hmm.
where you're feeling like I can't get as many calls? How can you use that time to best effect so that when things start ramping up, you're available to make the most of that time? But knowing that seasonality helps us to calm the nervous system and not freak out and not make terrible decisions in our business based on scarcity, which if you get into that scarcity, every bad decision I've ever seen in business is based on a fear of losing or not having enough. I have a client right now, she's an executive coach. She's signing, $75,000 deals. Those deals take 6 months to close for her client. So we know when we're doing planning, right now, she's actually planning out the end of Q1 and Q2 of 2025. So at least just knowing how your deals work, how the cycle works, so that you can be calm. Because I really do believe that a lot of business, what's really going on with us as business owners is the need to regulate our nervous systems through the highs and lows of business so that we can continue to make smart and empowered choices when things are good and when things are bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you plan ahead, it will be so much easier for you when you plan
Right?
ahead.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about what, in finding larger clients,
Mhm.
what's the number one thing that you recommend that our listeners should do?
The first thing I'd recommend is to get really, really clear on who exactly you want to work with. What is the target market you want to work with? Who do you want to go after? What is most, and that can be a combination of factors. So you want to look at what types of industries have I had experience with in the past? I kind of know how they work. And I may have connections within those industries, even at smaller sizes, that's okay. You also want to ask yourself, what am I actually really good at doing? What do I like doing? And what are people willing to pay me for? So when we sort of look at those four things, you're going to begin to see a picture emerge. I don't like when things kind of get a little messy when we say, I just want to go after big companies. Give me a list. Write out the 20 companies are your dream clients. Why are they your dream clients? Don't worry so much about the questions of they would never hire me. They must have staff for this. They actually don't. They hire consultants all the time. And there's many reasons for that. But you first want to get a list of those companies out, put it on paper. Then you probably want to go on LinkedIn and see who you know and sort of build some of those connections with who knows someone and stuff like that. You also want to start just talking to your network. Start talking to people you know. There are likely connections to where you want to go already within your network. But again, going back to the garden analogy, we have to start cultivating it. I see with my clients who have a clear target market and who start putting in business development practices that we recommend, within 3 months, they begin to see movement in terms of proposals being requested, deals starting to get signed. Again, it depends on the size of the company, the size of the deal, but typically within 3 months, we see some good movement. However, if they're going into an entirely new market where they really don't have connections and they have to do a lot of outreach, they have to show up at places where those folks are, you're looking at a longer cycle. You're looking at, I would say, easily 5 to 6 months to begin seeing traction. So it's important to know that if you want to do something radically different, it's probably going to take more time. The reason I was so successful with finding a huge company to work and consult with after leaving the startup world is because I stayed in tech and I only focused on tech companies, and I had a network full of people in technology who could actually help refer me. Now, if I had been in the startup world in tech and I said, well, now I want to move to agriculture, I mean, that would have been like starting at ground zero. So you don't have to start at ground zero. You likely have people in your network who can help you, and start reaching out to them.
Mm-hmm. Again, it's all about planning and it's about networking, I think, probably more than anything else. Like for you, being
Totally.
in the tech world, if you wanted to go to agriculture, can it be done? Absolutely, it
Yeah.
can be done, but it takes a little bit more work, a little bit more being strategic, and really a
Yes.
lot of networking. And I would say the term is boots on the ground, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you got to go cold call and go do all those type of things. But there is a lot of outreach. And it doesn't mean spamming people to death, because you will never get in front of somebody if you
Mhm.
spam them. But again, if I always say, if there's a will, there's a way
Exactly.
to make things happen.
And I want to say one more thing about this. We touched on it briefly earlier about your funnel and your pipeline. And I want to say, for everyone who's listening to this, who kind of maybe is putting me and Kathy on a pedestal, I want you to know that it never stops. So sometimes we have a thought that says, one day I can stop prospecting. One day I don't have to do all this, like looking for clients. One day, now it's true that it can get easier over time. But I will say that I have a wait list now to work with me. I continue to do my prospecting activities every single day, because I know that you need to maintain a healthy pipeline. And I also know that even if those don't turn into clients because I don't have capacity for them or whatever it may be, there's other gold in those relationships that is there to be had. And if I can be of service to them in some other way, and they can be of service to me in some non-monetary way that's very valuable, that's absolutely worth it. So instead of looking at your prospects with dollar signs in your eyes, look at them as people and your community and your network and people who are just like you on this earth, having an experience, going along the journey, and how can we help one another out? And I love approaching prospecting and business development with that heart of service. It just makes it more fun.
It makes it more fun and it makes it easier. Because if you
Yeah.
just think about, okay, it's just a dollar figure, after a while, you're going to get burnout. But if you get I guess, the joy out of helping other people,
Yeah.
and I would say that is one of the, like when you sign these big deals or whatever, even if it's not a big deal, if it's a small deal and you experience helping someone get, or a company get to the other side, that is the thing that's going to motivate you. It's not necessarily going to be the dollar figures associated with it, because that's what's going to be the fun. And I'm always all about fun. I'm like, if it's not fun, why do it?
Exactly. And the impact, you make a great impact.
Yeah, an impact. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, Laura, let me ask you this, because I know you're a rule breaker. What makes you a rule breaker?
Oh, Kathy, I was thinking a lot about this question and what I could tell you about. And I'm going to share something that I think is going to be very rule breaky. Do you remember a book called The 4 Hour Work Week?
Mm-hmm.
Tim Ferriss, in this book, this made huge waves. Tim Ferriss talked about basically taking 50 weeks off a year and having VAs run your business. And I remember reading this and thinking, oh my God, like this is such a novel idea. And as I've thought about it more over time, what has come to me is that I'm not actually interested in creating a business I want to run from. And I want to create a business where I can truly share my God-given gifts with the world and shine a light on others. And so for me, as I've continued on my entrepreneurial journey over the last dozen or so years, there have been many gurus that I've sort of seen and gotten excited by. I'll say, build $1 million business, hire all this staff, do all these things, launch things, create programs, create courses, do all this stuff. And for a while, I tried that. And I realized that none of it really made me feel very successful. And it was actually quite stressful and it was exhausting. And it struck me that my success comes from actually going small and not going big. And I think that's where I'm breaking quite a few rules of I don't aspire to necessarily have the $1 million business. What I aspire to do and what I am able to do, ironically, is have a business where I work 3 to 4 days a week, serving people I really love. And my take home pay is often more than what the take home pay is or profit is from $1 million business. Because the dirty little secret that many of us don't realize when we have stars in our eyes, And I learned this through a former client of mine who was a CFO for a lot of these sort of internet gurus, is that most of them are on the brink of bankruptcy.
Mm.
And if they are not on the brink of bankruptcy, they are not taking a salary. And so you think about that and you think, so I want everyone to just consider, if that is a goal of yours, to have a multi-million dollar business, whatever it may be for you, why is that a goal?
Mhm.
And could you achieve whatever you want to achieve with more simplicity, less complexity, and more freedom for yourself by breaking a few of the rules that you've been taught?
Yeah. Love that. Absolutely. Yeah. It's all about, I would say you're being very true to yourself is what you're doing. And
Trying to.
if you, exactly with what you said, you want to build this big business and that's being true to yourself, that's fantastic. But if you rather have a smaller, intimate business instead, that's fantastic too. You have to do what makes you feel good. So I'm so happy to have you on this show. And yeah, and I know you have a giveaway, and I will make sure it's a masterclass, I believe.
Yeah, we have a masterclass. It's right on the website, teaching you how to get your foot in the door with bigger clients. You can go grab
Yes.
it, go watch it. And if it doesn't totally change the way you think about your business, tell me, because you'd be the first.
We'll make sure to have that in the show notes so that everybody can watch that masterclass that Laura has put on there. And she said a couple really wonderful things, but I think the thing that struck me the most, I mean, there's a lot that struck me, but is that you deserve to be there. You deserve to be there. So don't ever underestimate yourself. And you have something special. You guys have heard me say this before. Take your gifts. You deserve to be there. And it's like throwing a stone into a stream and creating that ripple effect, just like my guest, Laura, has done in helping people really get that big deal feeling and being able to go after bigger clients and really achieve the life and business of their dreams. So again, Laura, I want to say thank you for being a guest. And for everyone that's out there, don't forget to be fierce and, of course, break some rules.